Anne, do you like to share your PowerPoint of the?
Oh.
Steve, great, Steve. Okay. Cool. So it's, it's very Pinterest-like or Netflix-like. Menu bar at the top and the front and back of the cards.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm muted. Okay.
Okay.
So our website's name is called Startist. The why we could fix that later. Okay. And so our website design is like based on like Pinterest or like Behance or other like the Apple iPhone website. So the menu bar is on the top and the contents are scrollable on the bottom. And we have made several features on the menu bar. There are the homepage, which is like this two cards that's overlapping each other that like basically represents trading cards, and the plus sign represents upload. Yeah, and the three stripes represents category, which displays all the category. Right now, we have only categorized all the things in colors since we don't have a database. And the last circle represents the account page, which we haven't bulleted yet, but it's gonna be like fully ready, like maybe later this fall. Yes.
Right.
And,
I like it.
And now let me yield the floor to Anne and let her introduce our like the Power PPT presentation. Thank you.
All right, good. It's good practice for you guys to present this project because I'm eager for you to present this project to some of our partners. Nice work, Steve.
I was quite impressed with Steve's presentation just now.
Very good, Steve. It was excellent.
I think in the past nearly 1 year or so, Anne and Steve have improved so much. They have improved, they have matured, and I mean, their competency level have really been upgraded.
Great.
I am very impressed. You guys are great.
Yeah. Ditto. I second that.
This is our lab book for like all the steps we have gone through, and this table of contents. At the beginning of our project, we first define the problem and the mission, and this is the design of our the sign or the logo. Our target audience is 10 plus DIY artists. And we did some research on what is an artist trading card. And we did research on Strathmore and Behance and Pinterest. And we did research on functionalities. Then we conclude what functionality we want, and account, upload, categorize, and trade. Then we did the sitemap, homepage, categorize, login, or accounts. This is the first draft of our page. How did the page look like? This is the account page. This is also the first draft of our logo. This is the 4D project. CSS templates. And yeah.
Anne's artwork, by the way, Brent. Can you go back to slide 21? Anne is a very, and Steve are very accomplished artists.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Tremendous.
We
And that was-
also
Go ahead.
we also tried to like use Bitbucket or GitHub to write our codes together, but it didn't work out for us. So we just use like version no, we just use like this one, Visual Studio Code. Yeah.
GitHub is banned in China, so they had to use a different source file a repository. Okay.
URL was 127 point and like all basically it's a local host. Someone has a server set up, right?
Yeah, right. And masterfully presented. A really professional, right to the point, short and sweet. It's brilliant. Both of you are
Thank you.
really accomplished presenters. Okay.
Oh, hey, John, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
I've noticed that you've been sending out emails, including Anne and Steve, okay, emails about the trading card project that involves a dozen other people,
Yep.
or maybe many other people.
Yep.
So this trading card project is a project involving a big team, right?
Right. Ultimately, we're gonna merge it all into one. What Ann and Steve are doing is a trading card site that's their own design, and it's really nice. I'm hoping that they will learn tricks that they can use in a trading card site that we can put under the umbrella of Invention Universe.
Oh, so the trading card site is only being worked on by Ann and Steve, right?
No, there's a group in Mexico, and some kids in California that are working on another trading card site.
Oh, they just work in separate teams.
Right,
And each team
right.
is working on a separate version of the trading card site, right?
Right. And then ultimately, when everyone understands how to use HTML and CSS on the front end and understands how to design a database, then we're going to bring the whole team together and make a trading card site we can put under the umbrella of Invention Universe.
Oh, so you would make a bigger team. You put all these kids into a bigger team, and then you would make a more professional version of the trading card site.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would be more professional, because what Steve and Ann just showed us is as professional as anything we do. I mean, they followed the process perfectly. Wouldn't you say, Brent? So
Yeah.
The process they used is really excellent.
Oh, right.
So we want all of our interns to be as accomplished as Ann and Steve are at designing and presenting.
Gotcha.
And then we'll put everyone together and try to take bits and pieces of what they've done and put it into a trading card site that we can put under the umbrella of Invention Universe.
Oh, gotcha. So you'll take bits and pieces from everyone, and will they be working together, like a dozen people? Would they be working together, having like project meetings and things like that?
Sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, I hope it goes that way.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. That sounds really exciting, and I think it's a great way for these interns to learn from each other, also to learn from pros like you and Brent, and maybe others like Vincent, right? Yeah. It's great.
Yeah,
It's great.
We'll bring many people to this project. This project is really an extension of Invention Universe. The whole idea of Invention Universe is to be able to present your work. And the idea of a trading card is to present your work in a particular format that's a little bit different than the present format we use in Invention Universe. So it's really an extension of Invention Universe.
Good, great. Yeah.
Okay, make
Awesome.
sense, guys?
Awesome.
Good. Okay, so that we don't waste Brent's time, thanks for your patience, Brent. What if we introduce Ann and Steve to database in terms of tables, records, and data cells or
Right.
data elements. And then we'll gradually, yeah, just like we did when we presented to the other group, Brent.
Gotcha. All right. So let's see. I think this was what I used from last time.
This
So
is, by the way, Steve and Ann, this is Brent's new studio. It's
oh,
in a closet. It's in a closet in his
This one's
apartment.
this one's actually not in the closet. Most
Okay.
are. So basically, I have a long history of setting up studios and closets, just because they're quiet, especially during the pandemic. It was just easier to find quiet. But
Oh, you know, like some people in China would say, hey, your closet is bigger than my bedroom.
yeah, the best closet I think I was in was like 6x4 or maybe 8x4. It's pretty good size. Smaller one was 4x4. This one actually I got some wingspan going on. It's like 5x7 space. So
Great.
totally upgrade. All right, so let me share my screen. Screen one. All right. I saw you guys were using, and you guys see the artist trading cards Google Sheet, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys have used, I'm assuming, Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets before?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I like to think a good introductory to databases and tables within a database, I like to compare it to a workbook in Excel or Google Sheets and tabs within. So the first comparison would be your actual database is equivalent to the entire workbook. So if you went to Excel, made a new file, or in the cloud made like a Google, Google Sheet, just the actual file, that's like the database. And then inside the database, you could set up multiple tables. Like this might be like table 2. You could have whatever, whatever amount of tables you want inside that database.
In our case, guys, we might have 2 tables. One table that defines all of the cards and another table that defines all the artists. And ultimately, we can relate those 2 tables. That's called a relational database, where 2 tables interact with each other.
Exactly. And then within the table, so right now we have database, which is like the workbook or the file, and then a tab within the file or a worksheet would be like the table within a database. Then inside of that, you would have your, I guess, let's say within the table you have your records, but within that you need to kind of define what columns or what like data you actually have saved. So on this spreadsheet, I have headings like unique ID, artist name, category, and picture path. This is just a quick example structure. But when you set up your database and you put a table in it, you tell the table, you tell the database like what columns are going to exist. So this example just has 4. And then, so if we say, the records within the database or records within a table, we're just talking basically about horizontal rows. So columns define the data or like what heading it goes under, but then each record or row within the spreadsheet basically is a unique record. It has typically a unique identifier, like a number or something that's special to it, that it should only have. Actually, you guys have been doing HTML. So have you guys done CSS? I know I've
Yes.
seen, yeah, I think
Yeah.
I've you guys
Yeah.
once or twice.
Mhm.
So with CSS, if you're familiar with an ID can be applied to something, but it should only exist once on a page. It has to be unique. So within this database table, each record has to have a unique identifier. So for just lack of a better description, unique ID. You see that's incremental. It every time there's a new record, it just automatically goes up by one. Over here, you see that artist name could repeat more than once. Then we have category, where the card may live. And actually, you guys had that spec'd out like beautifully. You had the different colors. And essentially, I'm assuming if you click on one of those options, you filter the list of cards that are available, right, by the category.
Yeah.
So same concept, right? That colored, rounded rectangle would basically apply to one of these categories. And then if I want to filter, you mostly use Excel these days. I believe if I go to data, filter view. Yeah, so we could disable whichever ones we want. And let's say just art. We click the art category, right? We wind up with our filtered view. Yeah. And let me just go back to none. Okay. So basically, that's what's happening, right? We actually, to describe that too, when you filter data in a worksheet or any spreadsheet software, that filter is a kind of equivalent to when you have a database on a website when you run a query. So a query just has specific criteria like, hey, grab all the data where category is art. And then it's going to spit that back out. And then you can loop through and then display each record using HTML. So you build like an HTML template that represents the card. And then each record, you just insert the name, insert the picture, that kind of stuff. And it just loops through as, through that filter essentially. And within that filter, you might limit it to, we'll get into this a little deeper, but you might say only show 10. And then when you scroll down the page, you could say, when we get to the end, auto load another 10, so like run another filter, but then you offset it, you grab the next 10, or you have like click next page, whichever, however you execute that. So basically, just to kind of recap, database is like the workbook, table is like the worksheet. And then within the table, you have records, which are like the rows. And within the table, you need to set up the, I guess you'd say, the fields or the data you're collecting. And those kind of wind up as the headings of the data. And that's, kind of just helps you cluster the entries into columns.
Great.
Make sense?
Okay, very good. Basics of how to set up a database, how to structure a database. Now, next step, should we, you talked a little bit about queries. Can you talk a little bit about the tools that we need to put this into a MySQL database? You can export your data from Excel into a CVS file. A CVS means comma separated variables, I think. Comma
Separated values.
values, right? And then you can import that CSV file into MySQL yeah, sorry, Brent, you can say it.
Okay, I do the same thing, honestly, with I have to, in my head, say comma separated values. I'll start talking about pharmacies. It's easy to flip those two. I'm guilty of that frequently. So so basically the tools. Actually, one quick question for you guys. Steve, I saw when you were sharing your screen, you had an IP address showing that I know refers to a local server. Do you have a server set up on your home computer or laptop?
What does that mean? I use like Visual Studio Codes and I use like the live server add-on.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is good to explain then. I just didn't want to be redundant and explain something you guys might already know. So basically, this is slightly side info, but local.
We're gonna set up an equivalent data, equivalent environment so that we can deal with a database. And it means we have to set up a web server.
Yeah, so basically, I think what Visual Studio does with that add-on is it essentially has a web server built into it, and any computer, if it points to itself, so like normally when you visit a website, it's looking online, going through a series of routers and stuff, DNS server, finds your computer you're trying to load files from and brings it back. You have really long, weird IPs. I know you guys have probably been through those PowerPoints. So when you have a server set up on your own computer, this is the IP address. And I noticed that this was your IP address in the address bar, Steve. And so that add-on, like John just said, we're going to create our own environment that we control and have a lot more, ability to tell it what to do. Actually, I don't know what the plugin lets you do, but it will let us run MySQL and PHP. So with that, the tool that I use when I'm testing things locally is called a Wamp server. If you're on Windows, it's Wamp. If you're on Linux, it's LAMP. If you're on Mac, it's Mamp. It's all the same thing. The first letter is just the operating system. And what this does is it creates a server stack on your computer with you just running an install file. Makes life easy. And once you have that set up, one of the tools you get is called phpMyAdmin. So phpMyAdmin allows you to manage databases visually. If you didn't have this tool, actually, down here you see console. I don't know if you guys have ever been in here before, but this is a little fun thing that I don't think anyone actually likes using. So the terminal or command prompt is like this little black box where you control everything through text. The thing that phpMyAdmin does is it lets you run commands that you normally would have to type in there with menu options, which make life a lot better. So if I wanted to take this table as a sample table, and what we're going to do is we're going to export this into a CSV file. And then what we're going to do over here is bring it in. We're going to import it. But before we bring it in, we have to create a database. So last week, when I was showing, it was on Sunday, one of the crews out in Mexico that was working on this, I showed them how to do the same thing, and we wound up with this. So I can actually preview this to you. You'll see this has the same structure and the same information that this has. And the way we got to this point was and we'll obviously walk through this a lot slower in the next few weeks. But if I click on new, I can visually create a database. And for lack of a better, just because it's sample, I'll just put DIY2. When you choose a name, don't be lazy like I am. This is just for example's sake. But you'll want to name it carefully, like artist trading card. Maybe you want to add a year or version number, something that's going to be recognizable. Because this name of the database, when we actually start writing the code in PHP, and PHP, I know we've thrown that around a few times already. All that is a language that runs on the server. That what happens is that it executes the code on the server, and it returns an HTML file to the website visitor. So it can do special things, like it can access a database, it can let you log in, it can let you create a session, meaning like it knows you're logged into a site, like when you have that account section. But it doesn't let the regular visitor on the outside actually access stuff. Like you can't touch the database, you're just getting the end result that PHP generates. So it's pretty cool, lets you do a lot of dynamic things without too much risk. So with that said, this is a lazy name. You'll see this in your code, so pick something smart that you can just glance at and understand. And then I'm going to click create. This will create a blank database with nothing in it. Now I can go to import, and it will allow me to import. If I go to format, I can choose CSV. Now I have to get my CSV file. So from the Google Sheets, and you can do this in Excel, you can do this in OpenOffice, any spreadsheet software at all should let you export to a CSV. It's a very standard open format. And if I just go to File, here I can go to Download and choose CSV. If for some reason you were in some other software like WPS or something, you might have like File Export or File Save. And then you just choose this as a format. And I know you guys have access to Google, so we'll probably be doing it there. But just in the event you were using something else, you're just looking for CSV and you can find it in basically any program. So this is downloaded. So all this data is in there. And last class I didn't show this, but if I right click this and I choose to open it with Notepad, you'll see why it's called a CSV file. So basically the top is the headers, and then each record is entered in with commas separating the values, right? So the commas are here, right? And each one of these, one refers to this one. You have a comma here, a comma here. I can blow this up big. Then you have artist name as column number 2. After the first comma, you have artist name, and so on. So you can see it's just literally values that are comma separated, and it's really easy to digest that, I think, glancing at it. So over here, I'm going to choose the files, and I'm going to click on it, open, and then from there, we want to just kind of check through this real quick. First thing I know we have to check off is the first line of the file contains the table column names. This is true because we set that up in Google Sheets. So we'll check that off. Next, update when duplicate values. None of that looks important. And okay, this all looks good. So I'm going to click on Go. If you see a bunch of green things, everything went great. If you see anything red, you probably want to read it carefully, is my general rule on this page. And usually they give you some good error results, like if you have a problem, but this worked great. So now we're going to go into this. This is the table we just imported, and we'll see unique ID, artist name, category, picture path. And now we actually can, you could use this on an actual web application. Like if I made a PHP file, I can start accessing this data already. It's fairly easy, to import it. The queries are less fun, but once you get used to them, they're very powerful, and I think you guys will enjoy them. So the last thing in here is when you do the automatic import, PHP MyAdmin doesn't understand exactly what you want it to do. It's going to take some approximation, some guesses on what you want to happen. So if I go over to structure, normally when you set up a database table, you will tell it specifically that, if if our column should only accept letters and numbers, if it should only be numbers, if it should only be like whole numbers, if it should be, so on, right? You specify the kind of data to validate the data. Because if you have a field called temperature, you might only want a number entered, right? Like, and then if you're working in Fahrenheit or Celsius, or if we're talking about height and you're putting in inches, right? We don't want people to put letters in there by accident, if they're entering in data. So this helps you control that. Now, one important change, the only important change I think we have to make, is unique ID needs to become what's called the primary key. And I think without over explaining that, primary, unique, right? It's the special one that's unique to the record. I'm just going to go to change, and there's just like a few quick little things we check off. So type integer is fine. This is all fine. Let's see. Wait, actually, this is the one we want to change. So integer, but if we scroll down, I believe we get primary key in here somewhere. Let me see. I might be mistaken. I think I am. Let's see, default, close, and attributes.
And may I chime in
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
So what Brent is talking about, as I understand it, each data field, there are certain types of data. So you have to classify your data as Brent described. You have to tell the database what type of data you have in each field. Can be text, can be numbers, can be whole numbers, can be fraction numbers. There's 10 or so data types.
And I'm for some reason missing where we chose primary key last time. I think it's the difference between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. for me. Well, let me just save this. Anyways. Okay, primary key, all parts of a primary key must not be null. Oh, here it is. Okay. So default none, and then does primary key open up? Is that what I did last time? Sure. Let me just save this. All parts must not be null. It's not current timestamp. Auto increment. Oh, there it is. Not null. Okay, so null means it can't be empty. So basically, if you have a unique identifier that's special to the record, allowing it to be empty means, well, one, technically it's not, it loses the ability to be unique, because if you allow the field to be empty, it can be empty more than once. So it basically breaks the function of it. So I had this checked off, and that was the problem. Auto increment, I believe auto turns it into a primary key. That's why I don't have to select it. Being almost bedtime for me, I forgot it can't be null. I have to uncheck this. And then default, I don't even think I changed that last time, but I'll just change it to that. Click save and make sure it doesn't break. Okay, so now we'll see it has a key next to it, and it says auto increment. Now we have a unique identifier that if we add an entry, it should go to the next value. So just to show you that, if I go to browse, we have value number 10, right? The last ID is 10. So if I go to insert, and we're not gonna really deal with touching this too much. Once you set it up, everything's gonna happen pretty much through the application we build. We'll probably just be importing CSV files. You can do everything in Excel basically, or Google Sheets. So think of it like you'll set this up, and then you really just go to import and bring in new data sets. Okay, so from here, if I want to add in something new, I don't need to enter a value for unique ID. That's automatic. Here, I'll just, actually, I think I used high last time, but I'll just put in, let's say, in category, Steve, and picture path, Ricky-John. That way we're all included. And then we'll click go. And what this should do is insert this data. And a cool thing about PHP MyAdmin, before we check that data, you'll see here one row inserted, row ID 11, insert into, this is the database, right? Well, the table rather. So insert into the table, and then it specifies the columns, and then it says values, and we put in those values. So by putting in null, it's auto increment. We don't specify the number, it picks the number. It knows the last one, it picks the next one, we don't touch it. But basically, when you run a query via the PHP language for MySQL, I could literally copy this, and then I just swap these out with variables. If you're adding new data, right? You do file, upload image, it gets the path where it's going to store it. And then it will, whatever you enter in the text fields, it will run the same query. So this tool not only lets us interact with the data, but as you write your code and you go, I don't know how to do that, you just do it here and it tells you the code, which I find invaluable because I can't remember how to code everything. I think knowing how to find the code is more important than remembering the code. Granted, as you do it a lot, you'll remember pieces and pieces of it, but if you just know the resource, it will serve you better, I think. So now we'll just jump over to browse, and we'll see that data we entered showed up and it exists. And that's basically how to use this tool to create a database, create a table, import data, and manipulate it a little bit. Any questions? I know I kind of showed you a lot.
This is a great place to stop, Brent. Well, following up on Brent's, any questions? Don't worry, this is a lot to absorb. We have a recording of it, so when you're creating your own database, you can run this recording. I think from a big picture perspective, after you've exercised this, you'll be able to put on your resume. I've had significant experience with HTML, with CSS, with PHP, the code that sits on the server and allows you to extract data from your database. And I have experience with MySQL. So those are basic concepts in all web applications. Almost all web applications require you nowadays to know those four things: PHP, MySQL for the back end, and HTML, CSS for the front end, the code that sits on your client versus the code that sits on your server, web server.
And there are other like languages that people may use or other databases in MySQL, but the same logic will carry over. So, you know, I know that even with Dimension Universe, I know one of the teams at one point used some other database like Layer or something, but basically it's store the data, it's organized in a certain structure, and you're just calling that data or interacting with the database to dump stuff in it. You know, so it's send and receive.
Well put, Brent. Once you learn one language or one environment, it's usually pretty easy to learn another environment because the same logic applies.
Yeah, and to tie it into, like, as you guys are designing the front end, and you guys know HTML and CSS already, just think of it as to get a database to send data to your website, build a website like there's no database. Just do an example page, right? Put 10 artists on a page if you want 10 displayed, 10 artist cards, different ones, doesn't matter. And make it look nice, make it work the way you want. Don't worry about the database side, right? You build it. Then what you do is the part where the cards are. In PHP, you can actually make a complete HTML file in PHP using just HTML code. Nothing special. You just save it as .php. It works just like .html. No real difference there. And then what you do is you create a loop. You know, you take one of those artist cards, delete the rest, right? Essentially, and then you just say for each record, and then anytime you have a name or like a picture, you backspace it, and then you use PHP that just says echo path, echo name, echo, you know, category. And then you're basically just dumping in a variable, just like in math, like where X equals something. Pretend X has 10 different values. And as it loops through, it just loops through 10 times if there's 10 records, and it just dumps out the data. You still use HTML to spec it out, to design it. So if you think of it as, well, before I even worry about my database, I just build my front end. Then you just integrate the back end. And that
Which is exactly what you guys have done, right? You have a working front end, and now we're doing what Brent suggests, making the database fit into that front end by feeding it information.
Yeah, I say that in case this is intimidating. What you have is what you need, and we're only going to build on it. So it's not like restarting or nothing too complicated. It's just a lot of new stuff we'll guide you through in the next few weeks.
Great. Okay. That's a lot to absorb. My head is spinning just listening to Brent. Don't worry, we'll go over it again and we'll practice it. That's when you'll really learn it.
Yeah, next thing we'll do step by step. We'll do the pieces, small pieces, and build it.
And we'll customize it to your application. To the way
Great.
you specified the application. Okay, any questions before we go? Tell us what, give us some feedback. Are we going too fast? Or is this interesting to you? Any feedback, Steve?
I think it's really interesting. Like we are getting into the getting deeper into HTML and building a website, and I feel like that's really interesting. And also like thank you, Brent, for introducing us to the database. Yeah.
Thank you, Brent. Brent is as good a teacher as we have at Build It Yourself. They don't come any better than Brent.
I also want to say thank you because like it's a whole lot of like new information and yeah, thank you. And also it's great that John, you have recorded.
Yeah, because it's a lot of information that we need to absorb.
Okay, good. I will review that recording myself. Okay,
Yes, so
Brent,
can you like send the video?
I'll put it
Yes.
on YouTube and I'll send you the link to YouTube.
Okay, nice,
Great.
great.
All right, guys. Have a good week. Brent, thank you. Ricky,
Thank
thanks for
you.
setting everything up. And see you next week. Stay out of trouble.
Especially you, Ricky. I'm just kidding. Right.
Don't get too drunk. Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome, man.
Bye-bye.